The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was bigger than most cities. Its walls stretched so high that clouds formed near the ceiling. Today, those walls echoed with angry voices from 47 different species. The sound was like a storm made of words. Ambassador Minho Park sat very still in his chair. His hands were folded on the table in front of him. His face showed no emotion. Around him, alien beings pointed fingers and shouted. Some had tentacles that waved in the air. Others had claws that scratched the metal tables. A few had multiple heads that argued with each other, but Minho did not move. Next to him sat Jeon Kim, the human military advisor. She wore a simple gray uniform with no decorations. Her eyes moved slowly across the room, watching every alien. Delegate, she counted their weapons. She noted which ones looked nervous and which ones looked angry. It was her job to keep the humans safe. On Minho's other side, Hyunwoo Lee organized papers in neat stacks. He was the chief negotiator. For 6 months, he had tried to find middle ground with these aliens. For 6 months, he had failed. Today would be the end of trying. High Chancellor Vexmouth of the Velkari Empire stood at the center of the room. He was 12 feet tall with skin like purple metal. His forearms gestured wildly as he spoke. His voice was loud enough to shake the windows. The human problem has gone too far. Vexmouth declared, they grow too fast. They build too much. They refuse to follow our rules. Voices rose in agreement. The Zephyrian delegate, a being made of living crystal, rang like a bell as he spoke. Humans expand to new worlds every month. They do not ask permission. They do not respect boundaries. A creature that looked like a giant flower with eyes in its petals swayed as it talked. Human technology advances too quickly. They discover things in years that take us centuries. It is not natural. It is dangerous. Minho listened to it all. He had heard these complaints many times before. The aliens were afraid. They were afraid because humans did things differently. They were afraid because humans were successful. The Velkari Chancellor raised one of his 4 hands. The room became quiet. The Galactic Council has reached a decision, he announced. Humanity must choose. You will accept our terms or you will face the consequences. He activated a holographic display. Words appeared in the air, written in 47 different languages. The human version was at the bottom in simple English. These are our demands, Vexmouth continued. First, humanity will reduce its military fleet by 90%. Second, all human colonies beyond the Sol system will be placed under council oversight. Third, human research into advanced weapons will stop immediately. Fourth, human trade routes will be managed by council authorities. The Chancellor's metal skin gleamed under the lights. Fifth, humanity will accept a council governor to rule your species. Sixth, all human ships will carry council observers. Seventh, humans will pay reparations for your unauthorized expansion. Jian's hand moved slightly toward her sidearm. Hyunwoo's pen stopped moving across his paper, but Minho remained perfectly still. And finally, Vexmouth said with satisfaction, humanity will formally apologize to the galaxy for your aggressive behavior and promise to never again act without council approval. The room erupted in cheers. Alien delegates congratulated each other. Some danced. Others made sounds that might have been singing. They acted like they had already won, but humans did not celebrate. They did not argue. They did not protest. Minho Park stood up slowly. The room gradually became quiet as delegates noticed his movement. All eyes turned to the human ambassador. Some aliens leaned forward, eager to hear humanity's surrender. The Human Federation has heard your terms, Minho said. His voice was calm and clear. It carried easily through the huge chamber. We have considered them carefully. Vexmouth smiled with satisfaction. And what is your answer, human? Minho looked directly at the Velkari Chancellor. His brown eyes were steady and unafraid. We respectfully decline. The silence that followed was complete. It was the kind of silence that comes before earthquakes or storms. Several aliens stopped breathing. Others made small, frightened sounds. You decline? Vexmouth asked. His forearms had stopped moving. You refuse our generous offer of supervision? We do, Minho replied simply, but you cannot. Sputtered the crystal being. The entire galaxy has spoken. You must obey, must we? Hyunwoo Lee asked as he closed his briefcase. The soft click of the latches closing seemed very loud in the quiet room. Jeon Kim stood up and straightened her uniform. She looked around the room one more time. I think we're done here, she said to her colleagues. The human delegates began gathering their things. They moved with calm efficiency, no rushing. No panic. They packed their computers, their papers, and their personal items with the same care they might use at the end of any normal meeting. Wait, Chancellor Vexmuth called out. You cannot simply leave. This is not how diplomacy works. Minho picked up his jacket and put it on slowly. You wanted us to choose, he said. We have chosen, but the consequences. Another alien delegate shouted, We have 47 military fleets. We can destroy your worlds. Jeon Kim paused and looked at the speaker. You could try, she said quietly. The way she said it made several aliens step backward. You are making a terrible mistake, Vexmuth declared. The galaxy will not tolerate your defiance. We will crush your rebellion. The humans walked toward the exit. Their footsteps echoed in the huge chamber. Other delegates scrambled to block their path, but something about the humans' calm confidence made them hesitate. At the massive doors, Minho Park stopped. He turned back to face the assembly. 47 species stared at him with mixtures of anger, fear, and confusion. For 50 years, humanity has been a member of this council, Minho said. We have shared our technology freely. We have protected trade routes without payment. We have mediated your disputes and prevented your wars. We have asked for nothing, except the right to exist and grow as we choose. His voice remained calm, but somehow it seemed to fill the entire chamber. Today you have told us that our friendship means nothing. You have demanded our surrender and called it diplomacy. You have threatened our children and called it justice. The ambassador's eyes moved slowly across the room, meeting the gaze of each delegate who dared to look at him. Very well. You wanted us gone? Congratulations, you got your wish. The human delegation walked through the doors. The great metal barriers began to close behind them with a deep, grinding sound that seemed to come from the planet's core. As the doors sealed shut, Chancellor Vexmuth realized that the sound reminded him of a tomb being closed, and in the terrible silence that followed, 47 species began to understand that they might have made the worst mistake in galactic history. The humans were gone. And soon the galaxy would learn exactly what that meant. 3 days passed after the humans left the council chambers. Then 7. Then 2 weeks. At first, the alien delegates celebrated. They threw parties on their ships. They sent messages home about their great victory over human arrogance. The Valkyrie Chancellor gave speeches about the new age of proper galactic order, but celebrations do not last forever, and reality has a way of making itself known. Captain Suyoung-chun sat in the pilot seat of her cargo ship, the Bizen Express. She was reading messages on her computer screen. There were hundreds of them, all from alien ports begging for her scheduled deliveries. Please, Captain Chun, read one message from a Zephyrian mining station. We need the medical supplies we're bringing next week. Our people are getting sick without the human medicines. Another message came from a farming world. Captain, where are the replacement parts for our harvesters? The growing season will be lost without them. A third message was from a space station. Our life support systems need human filters. We only have 5 days of clean air left. Su-hyun deleted each message without answering. Her orders were clear and came directly from Earth Command. All human vessels returned to human space immediately. No exceptions, no delays, no stops. She had been flying cargo routes for 15 years. She knew every alien port manager by name. Some had become friends. But friendship did not matter now. Orders were orders. Her ship turned away from the alien systems and headed home, across the galaxy. Other human ships were doing the same thing. Cargo vessels loaded with food, medicine, and machinery. Passenger ships full of alien diplomats and tourists. Even tiny personal craft owned by humans, living on alien worlds. All of them were going home on the industrial world of Kepler 442b. Shift Supervisor Grendix watched his factory floor with growing worry. The machines were still running. The robots still moved along their tracks. The automated systems still followed their programs, but something was wrong. A fabrication unit had been making strange noises for 2 days. Normally, he would call the human technical team. They would arrive within hours and fix whatever was broken. But his calls now went to empty offices. "Where are the humans?" asked his assistant, a six-legged being with compound eyes. "Gone," Grendix replied, "all of them. The transport ships took them away yesterday." The assistant's eyes clicked nervously. "But who will fix the machines?" Grendix did not know. The factory's instruction manuals were written in human languages. The spare parts came from human suppliers. Even the simple maintenance tasks required human-designed tools. "We will figure it out," he said, but his voice lacked confidence on the third day. The fabrication unit stopped working completely. On the fifth day, 2 more machines broke down. By the end of the week, half the factory floor was silent. The same thing was happening on dozens of worlds far from the industrial chaos. Taeyeon Choi sat in a secure room deep under the surface of Earth's moon. Banks of computers surrounded him, their screens showing data from across the galaxy. He was an intelligence analyst, and his job was to watch what happened when humans were not around to help. What he saw was frightening. "Sir," he said to his supervisor, "pirate attacks have increased by 300% in the Outer Rim sectors." His supervisor, a gray-haired woman named Director Park, nodded grimly. "The shipping lanes? Chaos," Taeyeon reported. "The Centauri route has been hit 6 times this week. The Vega commercial lane is completely abandoned. No one dares to ship anything valuable anymore." He pulled up another screen. "The crime syndicate ships are becoming bolder. They attacked a council medical transport yesterday, took all the supplies, and left the crew floating in space." Director Park watched the data scroll past. For 20 years, human patrol ships had kept the space lanes safe. Pirates knew that attacking ships under human protection meant swift and severe punishment. Now, with human ships gone, the criminals were coming out of hiding like insects after a rain. "What about system defenses?" she asked. "Breaking down," Taeyeon replied. Most alien worlds relied on human-built defense platforms. Without maintenance teams, the weapon systems are failing one by one. In another part of space, Commander Yoonji Park stood on the bridge of the human patrol ship Daegu's Pride. Through the wide windows, she could see an alien distress beacon flashing in the darkness. "Captain," said her communications officer, "we're receiving a distress call from an Aldorian transport. They're under attack by raiders." Unique could hear the fear in the alien voices crackling over the radio. "This is transport ship Peaceful Dawn. Please help us. They're cutting through our hull. Our children are aboard." The human crew looked at their commander. They were trained to help ships in distress. It was their duty. It was who they were, but orders were orders. "Continue on our current course," Yoonji said quietly. "Do not respond to the distress call." "But Captain," her weapons officer started to protest. "No," Yoonji cut him off. "We observe, we record, we do not engage." She watched the raider ships on her screen surround the helpless transport. She watched them dock and board. She watched them take everything valuable, including passengers who would be sold as slaves, and she did nothing. It was the hardest thing she had ever done. Back on the capital worlds of various alien species, government leaders were starting to panic. The Galactic Council tried to hold emergency meetings, but without human mediators. The sessions devolved into chaos. The Zephyrians and the Mollusk Confederation had an old border dispute. For 30 years, human diplomats had kept them from fighting. Now, with no humans to moderate, both sides began moving military ships toward the contested systems, the Flower. People accused the Valkyrie of stealing their trade routes. The crystal beings demanded compensation for industrial accidents that humans used to help resolve. Three minor species started arguing about mining rights in an asteroid field without humans to translate between different types of communication. Many species could not even understand each other. The insect-like crawlers spoke in chemical signals. The energy beings communicated with light pulses. The plant creatures used root networks to share thoughts. Humans had built translation devices that let everyone talk together. But those devices needed constant updates and maintenance. Without human technicians, the translators began to fail. Meetings became impossible. Arguments turned into shouting matches between creatures who could not understand each other's words. Chancellor Vexmuth stood before his military advisors in the Valkyrie war room. Maps of the galaxy covered the walls, but large sections were now marked in red. "Report," he commanded. "Sir," said General Corthax, 17 of our outer colonies have lost contact with the capital. Pirates have seized 3 cargo fleets. The industrial worlds are reporting massive production failures." The Chancellor's metal skin seemed to darken. "What about our military forces?" "Operational, sir, but—" The general hesitated. "Sir, we're having trouble coordinating fleet movements. The human navigation computers are locked out. Our own systems are less precise." It was an understatement. Valkyrie ships had always relied on human-built navigation computers for accurate space travel. Their own technology was decades behind. Without human assistance, their fleet movements were slow and clumsy. And the other species? Similar problems, sir. The Zephyrians lost 2 cruisers when their navigation failed near a black hole. The Flower people cannot coordinate their defense fleets at all. Chancellor Vexmuth slammed one of his 4 fists on the table. "This is temporary. We will adapt." But even as he said it, he knew it was not true. The problems were getting worse every day, not better. In space, human ships continued their journey home. They passed alien vessels that flashed emergency signals. They listened to distress calls from dozens of species. They watched as the careful order of galactic civilization began to crack and crumble, and they did nothing except observe. The galaxy was learning a lesson it would never forget. Humans had not been just another member species. They had been the glue that held everything together. Now the glue was gone, and everything was falling apart. 6 weeks had passed since the humans walked out of the Galactic Council. What had started as small problems was now becoming a nightmare. In the dark corners of space, creatures that had hidden from human justice began to crawl out of their holes. The Scorvan Syndicate, a criminal organization that humans had almost destroyed, started rebuilding their operations. Their ships moved like shadows through systems that had once been safe. Crime boss Nacris flexed his 6 arms as he studied star charts in his hidden base. For 15 years he had lived in fear of human patrol ships. Human captains did not negotiate. They did not accept bribes. When they found criminals, they destroyed them completely, but now the humans were gone. "Boss," said his lieutenant, a scarred alien with metal teeth, "our scouts report no human ships in the outer colonies. The shipping lanes are unguarded." Nacris smiled with his sharp teeth. "Excellent. Send word to all our cells. Operation Dark Harvest begins now." Within days, merchant ships throughout the galaxy began disappearing, not destroyed, but taken. Their crews vanished into slave markets that had not operated openly for decades. Cargo holds full of food, medicine, and technology were stripped clean and sold to the highest bidders. Captain Jinwoo Nam stood on the bridge of his destroyer, the Soul's Pride. His ship floated at the edge of human space, watching the chaos unfold in alien sectors. His orders were clear: observe but do not engage with any non-human vessels. "Captain," said his communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the Aldorian colonies." "Put it through," Jinwoo ordered. The face that appeared on the screen broke his heart. Elder Thyses was an Aldorian leader he had known for years. The peaceful, plant-like being was crying tears that looked like morning dew. "Captain Nam," Thyses said, his voice shaking, "please, you must help us. The raiders came 3 days ago. They took our children. Our young ones are being sold in the slave markets of Kepler Station. Jinwoo's hands clenched into fists. The Eldorians, or herbivores who had never fought a war. They grew the most beautiful gardens in the galaxy and wrote poetry about starlight. They had no weapons, no soldiers, no way to defend themselves. Elder Theises, Jinwoo said carefully, I am sorry, but my government has forbidden any intervention in non-human affairs. But surely, Theises pleaded, some humans will remember their friends? We trusted you. We believed in human goodness. The transmission ended, leaving Jinwoo staring at a blank screen. Behind him, his crew stood in angry silence. They all knew the Eldorians. They had protected those gentle beings for 20 years. Science Officer Han Yu stepped forward. Captain, she said quietly, according to our navigation charts, we are technically outside human space right now. That means we are not under direct military jurisdiction. Jinwoo looked at her. Then he looked at his crew. Every face showed the same expression. They wanted to help, regardless of orders. Helm, Jinwoo said after a long moment. Set course for Kepler Station. Best speed. Sir? The helmsman asked. We're going to retrieve some stolen property, Jinwoo replied, and if we happen to rescue some Eldorian children in the process, well, that's just a fortunate accident. Meanwhile, in Valkyrie space, Chancellor Vexmuth faced his own nightmare. 3 enemy fleets had crossed into Valkyrie territory, seeking revenge for old grievances. The Silicate hegemony remembered when the Valkyrie had conquered their homeworld. 50 years ago. The Tentacle Collective had not forgotten the trade wars that humans had helped end. Sir, reported Admiral Krex, our fleet is in position, but we're having coordination problems. Without human navigation computers, our attack formations are sloppy. The Valkyrie military had been designed to look impressive and intimidate weaker species, but in actual combat against determined enemies, they were discovering serious weaknesses. Their weapons were powerful but inaccurate. Their ships were large but slow. Their tactics relied on overwhelming force rather than skill. Deploy the fear projectors, the Chancellor ordered. These were psychological warfare devices that broadcast terror-inducing signals. Sir, the enemy fleets have human-built shields, the Admiral replied nervously. Our fear projectors cannot penetrate their defenses. For the first time in his life, Chancellor Vexmuth felt genuine fear. The Valkyrie had ruled through intimidation for centuries. Without that advantage, they were just another species with too many enemies on a refugee ship fleeing the war zones. Human war correspondent Minji Yang documented the chaos with her camera. She had been traveling with alien refugees when the fighting started. Now she was trapped in their territory, watching civilization collapse. This is Minji Yang reporting from the refugee ship Last Hope, she spoke into her camera. What I'm seeing here is complete breakdown of galactic order. These refugees have been traveling for weeks, looking for safe harbor. But every port they approach has been attacked or abandoned. Behind her, alien families huddled together in fear. Children cried for parents who had been taken by slavers. Elderly beings sat in despair, watching their life's work destroyed by pirates and warlords. The species that demanded human withdrawal are now begging for our return, Minji continued. But their messages to Earth go unanswered. Humanity has turned its back on the galaxy that rejected them. In the deepest regions of space, something far worse than pirates was stirring. The Devourer monitoring station had been silent for 3 months. Without human scientists to maintain the sensors, no one knew what was happening in the dark spaces between galaxies. Dr. Kyung Sato had been the lead researcher at the station before the evacuation order. Now, safe in human space, he watched automated warning signals with growing alarm. Director, he called to his supervisor at the Human Deep Space Research Institute, the Devourer containment barriers are showing stress fractures. Director Kim looked at the data with horror. How long before complete failure? At current deterioration rates? 6 months, maybe less. The Devourers were ancient beings from outside normal space. They consumed matter, energy, and even time itself. 50 years ago, human scientists had discovered them probing the barriers between dimensions. Working in secret, Humans had built containment systems to keep them locked away, but those systems needed constant maintenance. Without human oversight, the barriers were weakening. "Sir," Dr. Sato said quietly, "if the Devourers break through, they won't stop with alien worlds. They'll consume everything, including Earth." Back in alien space, the situation grew worse each day. Entire star systems went dark as their infrastructure collapsed. Species that had lived in peace for generations now fought over dwindling resources. The carefully balanced treaties that humans had negotiated fell apart as fear and desperation took hold. The Flower People's homeworld was overrun by refugees who stripped their gardens bare. The Crystal Being cities cracked under the strain of housing millions of displaced aliens. The peaceful trading stations became armed fortresses where merchants shot first and asked questions later, and through it all, human ships passed silently through space, observing everything and helping no one. They watched species that had called them aggressive and dangerous now begging for the return of human protection. The galaxy had demanded that humans leave the table of civilization. Now they were learning what civilization looked like without humans to maintain it. It looked like chaos. It looked like suffering. It looked like the end of everything they had built together, and somewhere in the dark between the stars, ancient hungry things began to test their chains, sensing that their guardians were gone. 6 months had passed since the humans left the Galactic Council. The galaxy was dying. Chancellor Vexmuth stood before the emergency session of the council, but he looked nothing like the proud leader who had once demanded human surrender. His purple metal skin was dull and scratched. One of his 4 arms hung useless at his side, injured in the latest attack on Valkyrie space. "Fellow delegates," he began, his voice no longer commanding but pleading, "we must face the truth. We were wrong about the humans." The great chamber that had once held 47 species now contained only 31. 16 species had gone completely silent. Some had been destroyed by wars. Others had collapsed from economic failure. A few had simply disappeared, their worlds dark and empty. "The Aldorian hegemony has fallen," reported the insect-like delegate from the Crawler Confederacy. "Slavers took their entire population. 300 million peaceful beings, sold in markets that humans once shut down." The Crystal Being representative rang with a mournful sound. "The Zephyrian mining colonies are gone. Pirates stripped every valuable resource and left the miners to die in space." "My own people," said the flower delegate, her beautiful petals, now brown and withered. "We have lost half our worlds to refugee invasions. Our gardens are gone. Our culture is destroyed." Chancellor Vexmuth listened to each report with growing despair. The numbers were horrifying. Over 200 worlds had been abandoned. Trade had collapsed by 80%. Billions of beings were dead or missing. "How many distress calls have gone unanswered?" he asked. "Over 50,000, came the reply. "And they increase every day." The truth was becoming clear. Humans had not been just another member of the council. They had been its foundation. Their ships had protected the trade routes. Their diplomats had prevented wars. Their technology had kept civilization running. Their very presence had maintained order. On Earth, in the capital city of New Seoul, President Kyung-ho Lee sat in his office reading intelligence reports. Each page told the same story. Galactic civilization was in total collapse. "Sir," said Intelligence Director Nayeon Choi, "we've received another message from the Galactic Council. They're formally apologizing for their treatment of humanity." President Lee looked tired. For 6 months, he had watched his former allies destroy themselves through fear and stupidity. "What exactly are they apologizing for?" "Everything, sir. They admit they were wrong to demand our surrender. They acknowledge that their species cannot maintain galactic order without human assistance. They're begging us to return." The president read the formal apology himself. It was written in dozens of languages and signed by every surviving council member. The words were humble and desperate. "They're offering to restore our full membership with no conditions," Director Choi continued. "They want things to go back to how they were before. And what do our analysts think will happen if we do nothing? Director Troy opened another file. Total civilizational collapse within 12 months. Most surviving species will regress to pre-spaceflight technology levels. Death toll estimates range from 10 to 20 billion beings. President Lee stood and walked to his window. Outside, he could see the lights of the human fleet assembling in orbit. Earth's shipyards were working around the clock, building new vessels and upgrading old ones. Humanity had used their 6 months of isolation well. And if we return? He asked. We can prevent the collapse, but only if we act soon. The Devourer containment systems are failing. If those barriers fall, even Earth won't be safe. The president made his decision. Schedule a cabinet meeting for tomorrow morning. We're going back to the galaxy. Sir, what terms should we offer? President Lee smiled grimly. Not offer, demand. This time, we negotiate from a position of strength. The next day, Ambassador Dong-Yun Kim stood in the rebuilt communications center of the Galactic Council. Most of the original chamber had been destroyed in riots when desperate species fought over dwindling resources. The new meeting room was smaller and humbler. The Human Federation has considered the Council's request for our return, Ambassador Kim announced. His words were broadcast across the galaxy to every surviving world. Alien delegates leaned forward. Eagerly, some had tears in their eyes. Others made sounds of hope and relief. We are prepared to re-engage with galactic civilization, Kim continued, under the following non-negotiable terms. The hope on alien faces began to mix with worry. First, the Human Federation will assume primary authority for galactic security. All military actions must be approved by human command. Second, human law enforcement will have jurisdiction in all space lanes and on all trading stations. Third, the Human Federation will control all interspecies trade agreements and resource allocation. Fourth, humans will have veto power over all Council decisions. Fifth, species that supported the original ultimatum against humanity will pay reparations for the damage caused by their poor judgment. Chancellor Vexmuth felt his remaining strength leave him. These terms essentially made humans the rulers of the galaxy. But as he looked around at the devastated remains of galactic civilization, he realized they had no choice. And finally, Ambassador Kim said, the Galactic Council will be dissolved. In its place, we will establish the Terran Commonwealth with Earth as the capital and humans as the primary governing species. The chamber fell silent. These were not negotiations. This was surrender. The crystal being delegate spoke first, his voice ringing like breaking glass. We diced. One. By one, the other delegates agreed. They had learned the hardest lesson in galactic history. They needed humans far more than humans needed them. On the bridge of the battleship Inchin's Fury, Admiral Yuna Kim watched the alien responses come in. Every surviving species was agreeing. To human terms, they had no choice. Admiral, said her communications officer, we're receiving coordinates for emergency response missions. The Aldorian rescue operation, the Devourer containment repair, the pirate suppression campaigns. Admiral Kim nodded. Signal the fleet? We have work to do. She looked out at the stars, thinking about how much had changed. 6 months ago, humans had been equal partners in a community of species. Now they were returning as the unquestioned leaders of whatever civilization could be saved. Launch all squadrons, she ordered. Let's go save the galaxy. As human ships spread out across space, carrying aid to desperate worlds and justice to those who had caused chaos, the surviving aliens watched with mixtures of relief and fear. They were grateful to be saved, but they understood what their salvation meant. Humanity was no longer asking for a seat at the table of galactic civilization. They owned the table now, and everyone else would have to earn their place at it. The human fleet returned to galactic space like a storm of metal and purpose. Where once they had arrived as diplomats and partners, now they came as saviors to a galaxy that had nearly destroyed itself. Admiral Yuna Kim stood on the command bridge of the flagship New Sol as her task force approached the outer rim. The space that had once been busy with trade ships was now filled with debris from pirate attacks and failed colonies. "Admiral," reported her tactical officer, "long-range sensors are detecting multiple Devourer breach points in Sector 7. The containment barriers are failing faster than our estimates predicted." Admiral Kim studied the tactical display. "Raid." Warning symbols marked where ancient horrors were trying to break through from outside normal space. Each breach point represented a threat that could consume entire solar systems. "How long before complete barrier failure?" she asked. 18 hours, maybe less." She turned to her communications officer. "Signal the fleet. All ships are to proceed to Sector 7 at maximum speed." Battle stations. The human fleet moved through space with deadly precision. Their ships were faster than anything the aliens had ever built. Their weapons were more accurate. Their coordination was perfect. Behind the main battle group came the support vessels, hospital ships to treat alien refugees, engineering ships to repair damaged stations, supply ships carrying food and medicine to worlds that had been cut off from trade. Commander GASCO led the first wave of fighters against the Devourer breach points. Through her cockpit window, she could see reality itself tearing apart as the ancient beings tried to force their way into normal space. "Gold Squadron," she called over the radio. "Deploy quantum torpedoes on my mark. Remember, these things eat energy, so make every shot count." The human fighters moved in perfect formation, launching weapons that no alien species had ever seen before. The quantum torpedoes created explosions that existed in multiple dimensions at once, sealing the tiers and space itself. For 3 hours, the battle raged. Human ships danced around threats that could unmake matter itself. Pilots who had trained for this moment their entire careers put their skills against enemies that defied the laws of physics. When the last breach point was sealed, Commander SEO looked at her tactical display with satisfaction. "Admiral Kim, this is Gold Leader. All Devourer incursions have been contained. The barriers are holding." The galaxy had been saved from its worst nightmare. But the cost of that salvation was clear. Only humans had the technology and skill to fight such threats, while the military handled the Devourers. Civilian administrators began the massive task of rebuilding galactic civilization. But this would not be the same civilization that had existed before. Economic Coordinator Taiho Yun established his headquarters on the former Galactic Council Station, now renamed Terra Station. His first act was to reorganize all trade agreements under human authority. From now on, he announced to a gathering of alien merchants, all interspecies trade will be conducted using human currency and human regulations. Any species that wants access to human-protected trade routes must agree to our terms. The terms were not harsh, but they were absolute. Humans would have preferred access to all markets. Human ships would have priority docking rights at all stations. Human law would govern all trade disputes. The Valkyrie representative, a minor official since Chancellor Vexmos' government had fallen, raised one of his 4 hands. "Coordinator Yun, these terms seem very restrictive. What if we cannot agree?" Taiho looked at him with calm eyes. "Then you are free to conduct trade using your own protection and your own currency. Good luck with the pirates." The Valkyrie official quickly agreed to the human terms, as did every other species. They had learned what happened when human protection was withdrawn. Meanwhile, Dr. Haijin Park was rebuilding the galaxy's scientific research programs. Her new human-led science consortium would coordinate all major research projects, but with strict rules about who could participate. Species that supported humanity during the crisis will have full access to our research-sharing programs, she explained to alien scientists. Species that demanded our surrender will have limited access until they prove their commitment to peaceful cooperation. The flower people, who had always been friendly to humans, found themselves with access to advanced agricultural technology that could restore their devastated gardens. The crystal beings, who had supported the ultimatum against humanity, discovered that human research was now classified above their security level. It was not revenge, Dr. Park explained. It was simply practical. Trust had to be earned. Captain Jinwoo Nam, who had disobeyed orders to rescue Aldorian children, now commanded an entire patrol fleet responsible for anti-piracy operations. His ships moved through space lanes that had been lawless for months, hunting down the criminals who had flourished during the chaos. Crime boss Nacris had been one of the most successful pirates during the human absence. His organization had captured hundreds of ships and enslaved thousands of aliens. He thought he was safe in his hidden base, protected by stolen weapons and hired mercenaries. He was wrong. Captain Nam's fleet found the pirate base using tracking technology that the criminals did not know existed. The battle lasted exactly 17 minutes. Nacris and his entire organization were either dead or in custody. "Let this be a message to all pirates and slavers," Captain Nam broadcast on all frequencies. "The galaxy is under human protection again. We do not negotiate with criminals. We do not accept bribes. We destroy those who prey on the innocent." Within 2 months, piracy in human-patrolled space dropped by 95%, but the new order was not just about military force. It was about fundamentally changing how galactic civilization worked. The old Galactic Council had been a democracy where each species had an equal vote. The new Terran Commonwealth was a hierarchy with humans at the top. Other species could participate, but only as junior partners under human supervision. Chancellor Vexmuth, now calling himself simply former Chancellor, met with the human administrators on Terra Station. He had come to discuss the future of his species under the new order. "The Valkyrie people wish to make amends for our past actions," he said humbly. "We understand that we were wrong to challenge human authority." The human representative, Administrator Sungmin Park, listened politely. "The Valkyrie Empire will be reorganized as the Valkyrie province under Terran Commonwealth authority. Your military will be disbanded except for local defense forces. Your government will be supervised by human advisors. And if we refuse?" Vexmuth asked, though he already knew the answer. "Then you will receive no human protection, no access to human technology, and no participation in Commonwealth trade. You will be on your own in a very dangerous galaxy." Vexmuth looked out the window at the human ships patrolling around the station. Sleek, powerful vessels that could destroy his entire remaining fleet without effort. "We accept," he said quietly. Across the galaxy, similar conversations were taking place. Species that had once been humanity's equals were now discovering their new place in the galactic hierarchy. Some were bitter about the change. Others were grateful just to be alive. The gentle Aldorians, rescued from slavery by human forces, gladly accepted Commonwealth protection. The warlike Tentacle Collective, their fleets destroyed in the recent chaos, had no choice but to submit to human authority. New laws were written, new trade agreements were signed. New defense pacts were established. But in every case, humans had the final word. The galaxy was being rebuilt. But it would be built to human specifications this time, and as alien species adjusted to their new reality, they began to understand what they had really lost when they demanded human surrender. They had not just lost an ally. They had lost their chance to be partners with the galaxy's dominant species. Now they would be subjects instead. 1 year had passed since humanity returned to galactic space. The Terran Commonwealth now governed 63 star systems and protected over 400 billion beings. The galaxy was at peace, but it was a different kind of peace than before. Secretary General Junho Yoon stood at the podium in the Great Assembly Hall of Terra Station. Before him sat representatives from 49 species, but this was no longer a council of equals. The humans sat at the center, elevated above the others. Alien delegates sat in sections marked by their species status in the Commonwealth hierarchy. "Fellow beings of the galaxy," Junho began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems. "Today marks the first anniversary of the Terran Commonwealth. It is time to speak honestly about what we have all learned." He gestured to a massive holographic display that showed the galaxy before and after human withdrawal. The contrast was startling. Before, busy trade routes, peaceful worlds, stable governments. During the absence, chaos, death, collapse. After the return, order restored, but under human control. Many of you once asked why we left this table. Junho continued, you believed you were rejecting humanity. But what you were actually rejecting was civilization itself. In the audience, former Chancellor Vexmuth sat in the section reserved for supervised species. His purple skin had lost its shine, and his posture showed the weight of defeat. He listened carefully, knowing that his people's future depended on human goodwill. The records are clear, the Secretary General said. In 6 months without human involvement, galactic civilization regressed by centuries. Wars that we had prevented for decades erupted overnight. Trade systems that we had built collapsed. Crime syndicates that we had destroyed returned stronger than ever. The holographic display showed detailed statistics. 17 species extinctions, 300 worlds abandoned, over 20 billion beings dead or enslaved. It was a catalog, a failure that made many alien delegates look away in shame. But the most important lesson, Junho said, was not what the galaxy learned about humanity. It was what humanity learned about itself. President Kyung-ho Lee, watching the speech from his office on Earth, nodded in agreement. For 1 year, human leaders had struggled with the reality of their new position. They had not wanted to become galactic rulers. They had wanted to be partners. But the galaxy had forced them to choose between leadership and abandonment. On her research station orbiting Alpha Centauri, historical analyst Seoyoung Kim was finishing her comprehensive study of the crisis. Her work, The Galactic Pause, How Humanity's Absence Revealed Their True Role, had become required reading throughout the Commonwealth. The evidence is overwhelming, she wrote in her conclusion. Humans had become the galaxy's immune system. They prevented conflicts, maintained trade, stopped crime, and protected against cosmic threats. When they were removed, the galaxy began to die like a body without defenses. Her research showed that humans had been involved in virtually every aspect of galactic civilization. They had mediated 89% of all interspecies disputes. Their ships had protected 94% of major trade routes. Their technology had powered 76% of all space stations. Their diplomatic corps had prevented over 300 potential wars, but perhaps most importantly, they had been the early warning system for threats like the Devourers. Without human deep space monitoring, the galaxy would have been caught. Completely unprepared for the cosmic horrors trying to break through from outside normal space. In his private study, President Kyung-ho Lee read Dr. Kim's report with mixed feelings. The data proved that humanity was essential to galactic stability, but it also showed how much responsibility they now carried. The weight of necessity, he had written in his personal journal. We thought we were joining a community of equals. Instead, we discovered that we were the only adults in a room full of children. It was a harsh truth, but the evidence supported it. When crisis struck, alien species had panicked. They had fought each other instead of working together. They had abandoned their principles when survival was threatened. They had proven themselves incapable of maintaining the civilization they had claimed to value. Humans, by contrast, had maintained discipline even during their withdrawal. They had followed orders not to intervene, no matter how much it hurt. To watch suffering they could have prevented. They had used their isolation to improve their technology and prepare for their eventual return. The difference in maturity was obvious to anyone willing to see it. On Terra Station, Secretary General Junho was reaching the climax of his speech. We have learned that the galaxy contains only one species capable of true leadership. One species willing to sacrifice for others without demanding immediate reward. One species that can maintain order without resorting to tyranny. He paused, letting his words sink in. That species is humanity, and we accept the responsibility that comes with that truth. The alien delegates listened in silence. Some felt grateful for human protection. Others resented their reduced status, but none could argue with the results. Under human leadership, the galaxy was safer, more prosperous, and more stable than it had ever been. But leadership requires subjects, Junho continued, and subjects must prove they deserve protection. The Commonwealth is not a charity. Species that contribute to galactic stability will be rewarded. Those that cause problems will face consequences. This was the new reality. The Eldorians, gentle and grateful, had been granted full Commonwealth citizenship and protection. The Flower People, who had always been peaceful, enjoyed favorable trade status and cultural exchange programs, but species that had supported the original ultimatum against humanity found themselves with restricted rights and limited access to human technology. The Velcari, once a proud empire, were now a supervised province whose every decision required human approval. The Crystal beings had lost their status as an advanced civilization and were classified as a developing species under human guidance. The Tentacle Collective, once warlike and aggressive, had been completely disarmed and placed under permanent human oversight. It was not punishment, human officials insisted. It was simply recognition of demonstrated competence. In her communications Center on Luna, Intelligence Director Neon Choi monitored the galaxy's reaction to the Secretary General's speech. Most species accepted the new order, understanding that they had no choice. But some grumbled about human arrogance and dreamed of rebellion. Let them dream, she reported to President Lee. We control all the major infrastructure now. Any species that wants to rebel would be cutting off their own life support. It was true. Human engineers had rebuilt the galaxy's systems with human technology. Human ships protected every major trade route. Human administrators oversaw every important government function. The Commonwealth was not just politically dominant, it was practically indispensable. As the anniversary ceremony concluded, Secretary General Junho offered a final thought. To our fellow beings of the galaxy we say this: humanity did not choose to become your leaders. You chose it for us when you rejected our partnership. We have accepted that role and we will fulfill it with honor. But remember this lesson: civilization is not a right. It is a privilege that must be earned and maintained. You tried to build a galaxy without human participation. You saw the results. Now you live in a galaxy under human protection. Learn to value what you nearly lost forever. As the alien delegates filed out of the assembly hall, many of them reflected on how much had changed. A year ago, they had feared human power and demanded human submission. Now they depended on human protection and lived under human authority. The galaxy no longer watched humans in fear of their strength. They watched in terror of their potential absence, and in the depths of space, human ships continued their eternal patrol, standing guard against threats that most aliens could not even imagine. They maintained the barriers that kept the devourers locked away. They hunted down criminals who preyed on the innocent. They prevented wars between species too immature to resolve their own conflicts. Humanity had learned the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes being strong means accepting responsibility for those who are weak. Sometimes being civilized means protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Sometimes being human means carrying burdens that no one else can bear. The table of galactic civilization still existed, but now it belonged to humanity, and everyone else was grateful just to have a place at it. The galaxy was safe. The galaxy was ordered. The galaxy was prosperous, and the galaxy would never again make the mistake of asking humanity to leave.